Well, I was doing a little tinkering around here. And just for fun, I thought I'd do a little safety check here, so I'm going to take the leads here. This is just a really inexpensive voltmeter. It's nothing fancy. You can get this at the car parts store, or actually you can get this at the junky offshore kind of tool shop. Anyway, so I'm just going to ground the chassis with one lead, and I'm hooking up to the we're by the sink here, and this 85 volts of AC there. Wonder if there's any DC. Tiny bit. There's something going on there. Let me flip the line cord over real quickie. So what I did was I exchanged the socket there. Do the same test. Okie dokie. So, whoop, that's DC. How about the little AC? Now, so that's not good. Well, more than likely, it's this capacitor. Let me get the schematic and show it to you. Well, we're back. And if you do a little look in here, one of the things I do, I don't believe I ever talked about this, is when I hunt down a schematic, usually they're big enough, they come in 2 parts, that's no big deal. I usually print 3 or 4 copies of it. One copy being a clean copy that goes with the radio, another copy being a copy that I draw on or make little notes on, stuff like that. The other 2 copies are copies that I use for when I replace parts. I highlight them. The dirty ones are ones that go with the radio, whoever the next owner is. Usually I kind of keep all that stuff in a folder. Anyway, we're having a little trouble with AC leaking out, so I bet $1 that cap there is the culprit. It's a noise cap, and it makes sense that when I flip it over, it changes. I flip this plug over, and it goes from hot or live to neutral. So one side is now the side we got hooked up now is now neutral or grounded. So actually, it's kind of a perspective thing. It's probably neutral or return. It's not earth ground. So what is that? That in your drawing there is C56. I'll just get out the old pin there and give her a little touch up. Now, there's always been a great debate about this, and I have never officially decided. Like a lot of things in life, I try and stay out of the middle of things that look squabblesome. Oh, these caps are kind of troublesome. The way they're installed. What they are. So let's see, if we were going to be a noise cap, we would be around in here. Let's see, looks like the line cord comes in here, and it's outside, it's not stiff, not too bad. Inside it's pretty stiff. Probably needs to be replaced. If I had to guess, I would say that this here is probably our culprit. It seems to be kind of lurking there, and this side over here, I don't know if that does. That doesn't do you any good. This is ground. There's a that little terminal strip there is, that one's grounded and hooked to the chassis, and then these are floating. This side's grounded, and this side here goes to the transformer. Here, maybe that's a little better. It just isn't really great, is it? And that's interesting because that lead, that kind of leaves off in space. That goes to the transformer right there. You can see it. I would think that this other lead here, it looks like that dives down and goes onto the chassis. I bet that probably skinnies along there, and if I had to guess, there's a yellow and a black on the power switch, which is interesting because I don't think that's how that's laid out on the schematic. The schematic shows it on the opposite side of the power transformer. Well, a little research, freshening up the old brain box, reveals that this is an actual micro mold branded cap, and there's always some argument about them and yabba yabba yabba. In this type of circuit, probably bye-bye. Okay, we need to fix something here, so get her fixed up. This is the micro mold cap again. I don't know why I can't see that. Anyway, it's brown, black, orange, and it's red the direction the arrow points from left to right. So kind of like the resistor color code, brown is 1, black is 0, and orange is 3 zeros. This little corner is the working voltage, and it's blue, and it's a 6. Well, everything in this corner, to the best of my knowledge, is in hundreds, so that's 600 volts. So you've got 10,000 picofarad. These are all read in picofarad. Now, if you want to convert that to microfarad, you just move the old decimal point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll add another one there, 6. So it's 0.01 microfarad. Easy? No problem. Picofarad, microfarad, and nowadays, just to confuse people, they're throwing nanofarad anywhere. Anyway, you move, all these are specified, to the best of my knowledge, are specified in picofarad. So to convert them to nano, in the scheme of things, that baby ought to go bye-bye, even though it's kind of cool looking. Just kind of glancing at that, trying to see. That baby is really wrapped up in there. Well, let me tell you what. Realistically, no more work on the radio should happen until you get the line cord straightened up, and definitely something like that straightened up is definitely kind of hazardous. Now, the debate comes whether you should modernize these sets. Well, that's what I call it, or bring them up to code. None of these sets have a fuse in them that I've ever seen. Very few, anyway. And none of them have the capacitors or the X caps or the Y caps or the safety caps in general. So there's a fight waiting to happen. My personal opinion is it is for you to decide and research. Get out on the net and look at them. Every day that goes by, there's always some new information or some new practice. Personally, I don't know, I could see this a lot of different ways. Nowadays you see a lot of caps, from line to line or from line to ground or all three. You see that especially in like surge strips and those types of things. You could build up a lot of stuff. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this cap. And I seem to have lost the other one. And I've been over here screwing around, and I didn't start the camera on time, which is a no-no. Oh well. somebody soldered that on there. What a mess. Okay. Let's see if I can get that flattened out. I was just saying that this is probably not a good example of how to remove this. You probably would just snip this. Actually, right now I've kind of got it in the corner. I should just snip it loose and pull it on through. I like screwing around with this stuff to see if I can get it out. It's fighting back because it's really wound up in there. Okay. So we got that one out. Let's see what I do with my new shiny new cap, which is this is a little orange drop cap. It's the same rating. And unfortunately, it's not wide enough to. Kind of bending the leads up here a little bit carefully. Don't get to wrench it on these too much. One of the things that's kind of a, I'm going to call it a courtesy, a professional courtesy, is to put the markings toward the top. You can put them on there, it won't hurt anything, it's not polarized. But it's kind of just a mean trick, because now somebody's got to bend it up to figure out what it is, if they need to look at it. I personally don't think much of that. Let's see, so maybe about there. Up there. I don't know, make it look like you gave a damn. How's that sound? Yeah. Okay, so we'll trim those leads up a little bit. I just snap that baby right back in there. Here we go. Okay. Now I'm just going to put a little gentle bend underneath there to kind of lock that in place, actually. There we go. And a little heat, and just let the solder do the work. I'm just going to touch up that whole connection a little bit. And same thing on the other side, we'll let the heat, or the old solder iron, warm that baby up. That's kind of a no-no. If you can see that, it's not too good. That's not. You can see that that lead there is really close to this other one. It's got like about a paper thickness between the two. Let's see if we can move it a little bit. I'm just going to heat this side and see if I can shove it over with my hand. There we go. That's better. Not really super pleased with that. I wonder if I can carefully, so could that rock and get over there? Yeah, it could. form those leads up a little bit and kind of see if I can get that out of the way. There we go. That's a lot better. And I'm just going to resolder that again. There we go. Looking like a champ. Okay. So, now, let me try that again. This camera is not the happiest about focusing at weird distances. Anyway, I got quite a bit of space there. Okay, so that feels a lot better. We got that old nasty monster out of there. So, yeah, it's actually... this is actually a micro-molded brand. If you can see that. Yeah, type 340. And there are the colors. Black and brown and black and orange, and then that's the voltage rating there. I believe the voltage rating is whatever the color is in hundreds of volts. So a brown one would be 100 volts. They're kind of cool. I mean, I don't know why I'm saving it. It just looks neat. Okay. One down, a lot to go. And again, you know, we probably really ought to fix up the line cord. See, that's getting a little worn looking there. These grommets, or these restraint reliefs, you punch that, you squeeze that in, and sometimes if you squeeze both sides with like needle nose, like that, and the screwdriver and a little elbow grease. Usually get them out of there. They can be a pill sometimes because, like I said, there's actually an installation tool. They can be a bit of a bear. There we go. I'll just leave that out. It'll be a subtle reminder to get that baby fixed. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that grommet apart. If I can get it apart. There we go. And you can see it's just a little two-piece affair. It kind of puts a little bendy bend, a Z bend or whatever, a zigzag in there. I've always had my doubts about those, but you see tons and tons of them. And they don't seem to screw up. I believe there are correct sizes, and that's how they work. So there's some things in life you kind of look at a little hard and give it a kind of, I don't know about that, but they do work, so you just leave them alone. Okay. That actually is, I don't know if you can see that, it actually is cracking through. Good thing we looked at it. See it there? So depending on which side you get a hold of, that could be bad. There you can see, there's another, is that another crack there? Yep. So that's one of the bad things about those strain reliefs, is they're a really rigid fixed point. And when you do something like that, this starts happening, and a few flexes later, breaks. And realistically, despite what anybody says, you ought to look at all that stuff first, you know, because you're you're in there and you're jacking around. Now, one thing you could do is if you don't have a strain relief or you lost it, you could put a rubber grommet in there and put an electrician's knot in there. Or some kind of strain relief, and you could put a little loop in there, a cable tie, or something. There ought to be something to keep it from, you know, getting tugged on. And don't say you can't afford a line cord, because you could go to a garage sale and get one off an old appliance. My personal favorite ones are like irons and anything heating element. Those cords are a little more rubberized, they're a little heavier. Sometimes they're shorter, but they're pretty damn tough. And even old ones are tougher than these plastic molded pieces. So there you go. Now, granted, you could get a more modern cord. But I don't know. You know, it's one of those things where if you look ahead, you'll kind of save yourself some grief. Now, one thing you could do, I don't recommend it, you could cut this loose, shove it back in there, you know, and freshen it up. But this cord is pretty, it's getting pretty stiff. Not this one. If it was a pretty new appliance, device, radio, you know, within that last maybe 5 years, and somebody just tugged on it or got slammed or pinched, yeah, that's a fair repair. But something like this, nah, let's not do that. Okay. Well, what we probably ought to do is look at the schematic and figure out any caps that really ought to get replaced that are, what do I want to say, kind of potentially dangerous, or ones that if they fail are going to go to hell. The filter caps in this thing seem to be in really great shape, and that being said, despite what people say, my theory about this is old filter caps, they will eventually fail. It's a given. It's kind of like your hard drive on your computer. It's not if it'll fail, it's when it'll fail. But if the thing was stored well and not subjected to a lot of, you know, cold or heat or ridiculous extremes, I've gotten a hold of some old caps and they seem pretty decent. They've been hanging in there. But again, depends on what you want to do. Now, there's a couple things you could do with that electrolytic. You could weasel it off the chassis, and cut it open and restuff it. You could just break these leads loose and get a little, you know, you could find a nice little terminal strip and mount it to there and do that. It's under the chassis, nobody's going to see it. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. It depends on what you want to do. You know, do you just want to repair this? Do you want to, you know, what do I want to say? It just depends. That's all there is to it. I think on this one I'm just going to leave this alone. I'm going to watch that cap a little bit. What I might do is I might disconnect it and use one of my cap meters to see how much leakage it has and kind of make a judgment call from there. Now, the rest of these old paper caps, even though this thing still seems to be running, are kind of like little landmines. Now, if I was going to flip this over and sell it, I would probably replace that filter cap. Another thing we didn't talk about was fusing. There are a lot of different, you know, theories about that. And one good practice is you can buy these little fuse blocks that mount, and you can tuck them on the inside of the aprons here or the sides, and put a small glass fuse. Those old automotive fuses, which is funny, they aren't that old. Those are like the 3AG type glass fuses, and you can fuse it appropriately. If I was going to fix this all up and give it away or sell it to somebody, I might do that. Or I would at least put a note somewhere that says, hey, this really could use a fuse, even though they were supposed to be using the fusing in the houses. I don't know. I think that line cord wouldn't look too good after a 10 amp short. And that's something you could do. Again, just tuck it under the apron out of the way, maybe. Or you could drill another hole, put one of those chassis mount. There are some really nice chassis mount fuse holders. There's some older ones that are new stock. You see them all the time where you could liberate it from some equipment. Those work fine. And that probably would blend in with the back of this. You know, you could do that. Although, keep in mind that every time you modify something, you probably knock potentially a little value off of it. But that's potato. You could go as far as to get one of those inline fuses and just cut the cord and shove it in there ways and put it in there. That would be on those modifications, what I always do is I always think about what it's going to take to reverse it, and is it something that can be reversed without a lot of body work. So for me, if I was going to put a fuse in there, you could mount it, you know, here there's an existing hole, and that would be a pretty good up-to-date retrofit. That being said, my solution to all this is I have an external cord with a plug and a socket on it and a fuse in it, and I use it that way. That way I can run these out in the public. I believe I've said this before. But it depends, you know. You're never going to make the world safe from everything. It's a good question. It's a good ethical question. It's something you really ought to think about. And if you don't, even if you don't do it, it's something you might want to tell a potential customer, especially on older equipment. Hey, this is older, and it really, I don't know if this isn't up to snuff. No, there's plenty of things that don't have fuses. I don't know. It's something to let the customer kind of think about. Maybe that's who really should decide, is the end user. So if you're doing this for yourself, decide. If you're doing it for a customer, let them know, and then there's a half an hour, or 45 minutes, or 15 minutes of time there. I've even seen guys use double stick tape and just slap those things in there. A little hazy, but it's been done. I guess, I don't know. Up to them. Okie dokie. Well, I'm going to take a little break here, and I'll talk to you later. And just for fun, here's a little follow-up on this. This cap, see, it's not leaking now. And just to prove it, I'll throw the voltmeter on the ground. We'll just flip the cord over and pick up the spoils of war here. I think these videos go well. You got another thing coming. Yeah, nothing. Okay. So we're safe. That's a good call. Little monster. Okie dokie. Well, we'll talk to you in a bit.